So this one is going to be another quick lesson, jumping ahead when we're talking about booleans in the last lesson. So we've got this value that can either be true or false. And when we're actually checking to see if the condition is true, when we're doing something like if d equals true and we're using a boolean, this is actually something that we want to try to avoid. We want to instead, when we are using a boolean value and using a condition as well, we already know that this is either true or false, so we don't have to declare, we don't have to add this additional part where we can just do something like this, if d, and then this is going to output, and else this is going to output. And the same thing with not true, where we can just do this exclamation mark in front of it and check if this is false, because again there's only the two values, true and false. So if this is false, then it outputs in this type of format. We're also going to get more into this in the later lessons, so we're just quickly doing this right now, and we're going to go more into conditional statements in the later lessons as well. Another thing that we just wanted to add within this lesson is the output of console. So as we had looked at in the earlier lesson, we were using what's known as the console here. And this is a great way when you're developing content. So instead of having to write it out over here and mess with your HTML code, so this doesn't really output it well. I mean, it does output it on the screen, but ideally, if it's something that we're calculating and we don't necessarily want to show up within our HTML code, and I did mention that this is probably not the best way to output content. Preferable way is to use what's called the console, so console log. So instead of actually outputting them over here, I'm just going to output this all to the console log, and I'm going to output a message here that d is false, and I'm going to do another one here in the else statement, so d is true. And then of course if I remove that exclamation mark, I would have to switch those around. So now when I refresh it, it's going to be gone from here, and we see that, oops, sorry, I think I got the D backwards, but we see that this actually gets output here. And okay, so if it equals this one, then this is going to be true, and if not, it's going to equal this one. So D is not false, so it's true. So that's why the output is true. And if we do this, then this actually should be wrong. So D is false. So that was the correct way to do it, to check if D is false, then it's going to output that, and if D is true, then it's going to output that. So this is how you output it to the console, and you're going to find that outputting content to the console, especially when you're working with variables and values, this is going to be a useful tool to be able to output content and be able to read it without having to really mess up with what's happening in your HTML code. Always try to keep the logic separate, keep the script, the JavaScript, separated from the HTML, just like you're keeping the CSS separated from being inline as much as possible whenever you can avoid it. Try to separate everything out. And this is going to lead to better coding, which will be more useful when you are trying to read through it at a later point. And this is why outputting it to the console is more ideal, because it's going to be less messy.